Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Blacklist. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, there's a whole situation with obviously picking up with Reddington, obviously his health. I didn't even think about that last episode because I was wondering, what about Reddington? I was like, right, I completely forgot that the previous episode, prior to last week's episode, Reddington had passed out because of medical stuff. And so it was a situation of... Well, the fact is, I just thought about that because Wrestler was gone the entire episode. So that means Wrestler's entire episode most likely took place because I was like, yeah, because he's missing actually a good chunk of the episode. So it's probably arguably his episode happened during this time. Maybe. I don't, like I said, I'm most likely reading too much into it and probably not thinking about it correctly. Regardless, the fact of the matter is, his doctor's kind of warning him about it, but Reddington's just kind of hazed out. And so it's all right, he asked Denbei about, who took his Imon. And it turns out obviously it's this dude named Arturo, but it turns out Arturo's in prison. So it's how did he do that? And obviously I love Reddington being he loves this because it's a locked room mystery, but it's this isn't even the interesting twist on it because we know who the person is and they're locked behind in a cell. They're the ones locked in a room. So how could they commit it? Because even Harold's why would you frame someone that's got the perfect alibi? So it wouldn't make any sense. So obviously Wrestler and Cain go to speak with Arturo, and I love the whole situation. He's who said I came here to talk? I came to enjoy the view. And Wrestler's I mean, I know I'm pretty and all, but you're not my type. I was I don't know why I love that. I was oh, Wrestler, you beautiful bastard. I love you for that. But Arturo is oh, no, I'm not going to talk. But he gives a note saying he will talk, just not there. And I'm oh, what's this all about? Because then we had, because later on we see the dude who running the prison, the warden, Roy Cain, he's meeting. Basically, someone needs a witness taken out. And he's yeah, I got on this. And immediately my brain was okay, so that's what it is. He's basically licensing out. He's basically hiring out his inmates to people to kind of do criminal business for him. And obviously Arturo kind of got caught writing that note, so they end up using another inmate to end up killing him. So now it turns into a situation there's many different moving pieces here in this regard, but I thought it was really fascinating how basically they ultimately ended up figuring this out because because at the same time this whole thing is happening, Reddington goes to Marvin because Marvin was at this prison, so he might have the lowdown, but he doesn't want to help Reddington because he was I was locked up in prison. And Reddington, he's I went to prison for 3 years because Reddington's no one abandoned you. And he was the fact of the matter is you were already in prison. I broke you out and all that stuff, it's yeah. And he's just kind of it's not kind of on me. He's I am here because I need a favor from you. And he's basically it's basically this dude that's part of an ethics committee basically is able to determine won't give him his license as a lawyer back because it's oh, you're you don't have the morality necessary to be a lawyer, which even Reddington was you're a lawyer, what does moral character have to do with anything? And even Marvin's I know exactly what's up, so which that obviously is a commentary on in its own, just kind of what that joke was meant about, so it's interesting. So Marvin's oh, I won't help you unless you help me. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And so Reddington's okay, so basically you want me to threaten a disciplinary dude about your moral character so you can be a lawyer again. And then Marvin's yeah, that sounds about right. So he ends up having a sit down with Al. Now, my thing is, I don't know how to interpret that. Now, his name is Al. So is this Al Roker playing a fictionalized version of himself? Or is this supposed to be Al Roker, playing a fictionalized version of himself, but it is a, very, fictionalized version of himself? You get what I'm saying? One is just himself in his fictional world of the Blacklist being himself, or another one, it's oh, this is a version of Al, or is he just some random dude named Al? That's what I couldn't get because they just kept calling him Al. So that's why I was I don't. And the fact is, you name him the same. That's what I'm curious about. And him and Reddington go back. It's oh yeah, oh we should catch up more. Blah blah blah. He's Red, Denbei. Oh man, this is crazy. And then it's oh, so I need you to talk to him. So it turns out that's Al's lawyer, the dude that's blocking Marvin from getting his license as a lawyer back. So they're having to sit down and everything, and I love it because like the moment they meet eyes, like Marvin and that dude kind of go at it, and it's like, whoa, let's just sit down. And so basically, I love Reddington being like, the fact of the matter is, Marvin is very good. He's very dedicated to the cause. So like basically saying he's a good lawyer. He has the good heart for, well, not good heart for the, but has the moral compass to be a lawyer. He's like, now personality wise, he's basically got it, like basically saying that he's got a shitty personality. And Marvin's looking at him like, what the hell? Got proof of that earlier in the episode, the way he kind of chewed into that lady, because he was like, oh, do you have this? And he was like, well, if it's not there, then we don't have it. And she's like, I don't. He's like, you should check over there. She's like, I don't see any blue. And he's like, then we don't have it. And then she's keep asking him, and he was pissed off at her. He was getting aggravated. I'm like, this is your job. But for him, I guess it's just because his job is, well, it also shows you he's just not really good with people. So it kind of fits what Reddington talked about, him having a shitty personality. But Al was like, if you don't reinstate Marvin, I'm gonna walk away. It's like, even if you don't believe Reddington's like, even if you don't believe Marvin has good moral character, we know that Al will. So basically helping him out is making sure that you keep, and he's like, you wouldn't actually do it. And Red's like, oh, the fact is Al might have a beautiful face, like a good face, a face of an angel, but the fact is he's very deceptive. Like the fact is he's like, oh, it turned into a card game, and he Al bluffed him, and he ended up, Al ended up winning. So I just thought that was an interesting exchange. So Marvin's the one that kind of gave them the lowdown. And I love Liz being like, is that Marvin? Aren't you supposed to be locked up? And he's like, yes, it's me, Agent Cain. And like Parker's like, who's Marvin? And then like Aram is mouthing his lawyer. But nevertheless, because of this, they start looking into the main guard that's Cain, Warden Cain's right-hand man, and they end up following him, and it turns out like all those bad guys, he got released, because it turns out like him and these inmates are like, well, the inmates himself, not him, but the inmates are putting a hit out on this witness. Luckily, Park and Liz were there to save the day, but they were able to get, well, some of, at least, three of them ended up getting away, one ended up dying, and the other one ended up getting captured. So it's a situation of like, basically we kind of find out like Warden Cain's whole thing is like, you work for me. Basically it's kind of like, I scratch your back, you scratch my back type of situation of like, hey, I need you to, do the job for me. And when you do it, I'm going to take care of your family and we take care of him, that type of situation. So that's why they have such loyalty to him. Because even I was like, I was like, what do you guys get out of this? It's not like, do you get paid or something? It's like, no, your families get taken care of type of situation. But poor bastards, because it's like the cops were already onto them. It's interesting because the guard, it's like, we never get to see him again after the warden was like, oh, you go back to prison, call in like the escaped convicts and stuff like that. But he's going to get eventually busted for his own part to play in this too, especially because later on, Warden Cain's dead. So everyone kind of takes a fall for the whole thing. But regardless, they end up, the warden ends up killing all the other. He's like, yeah, we did have a good thing going. He ends up killing everybody and goes back home, and Reddington's waiting for him. And I thought, once again, it's always a thing of, yes, Reddington's a criminal, but he has his own standards, because it's like, you as a warden, I've never thought a warden of a prison is very innovative. Like, the fact of the matter is, like the way some wardens kind of handle their prisons, the like inhumane way and cruelty that they treat their inmates. And for him, what makes Cain even worse is the fact is that he profits off of it. So it's like, I'm curious, like how you came up with an idea. He's like, I'm always wondering about that light bulb moment. And he's like, that's not me just making a suggestion. That's more of an order of you tell me how it came about. It turns out it's a family thing. He took over the operation from his father, who took over from his father, and so on and so forth. Because basically it goes back to like slave times, where basically there were slaves that were it's like, oh, they'd sell them to other people to work on their farms and stuff like that. And it's like, and it's almost a parallel he creates of like, oh, these inmates, they come to our prison, they're not humans, they're animals. So why don't we treat them as like, why kind of treat them like human? Let's put them to some good use. And Reddington's almost like, now it makes sense, the correlation you have, like why you treat people like they're animals, because it kind of runs in your family to treat certain people as less than, So it's like, all right, so who gave the order about the Imam situation? And it was like, he gave Katerina's alias. And he was like, think again. And she was like, because she's dead. It's like, well, she wasn't dead 2 weeks ago. And so it was like, now Reddington knows, Katarina was behind this. The entire time, Denbei ended up, getting a call from her. Because it actually led to an interesting conversation between Katarina and his imam, because he's a man of faith. And she's like, why do you believe in that so much? Why do you believe in the word of man? It's like, these weren't just men, these were prophets. And it's like, well, how do you know that these are actually Allah's words? Because for him, he has faith, he has belief, which obviously, even Katarina's like, oh yeah, I have faith too, but faith kind of that I create for myself. So, but for her, it's like, what my situation is, because he's like, oh yeah, this has to do with Reddington, because he's like, I also know who you are, so he knows exactly what this is all about. It's like, because Denbei has confided in you, and for that, he's like, because of that, I won't betray the confidence that Denbei has left with me. So, she's talking about, but this is about my life. You would not, you keeping secrets, Reddington's secrets, like the secrets that Denbei told you that are Reddington's, by you keeping them, you're basically killing me. So how are you okay? Like, your faith kind of, means nothing, what, because it doesn't care about me. And he's like, all I can do is pray for you. So it's like, okay, so if you're not going to care about your own life in this situation, let's see if Denbei is going to care about your life. So she ends up calling Denbei and forcing his hand. You come here, like, no Reddington. If you don't, your Iman will die. So it's up to you. And so it's a situation of Denbei's in this tough position where he's like, what do I do? Because he's like, I won't trade someone's life for Reddington's soul. Because the fact of the matter is, for him, it's like, one person's life isn't worth, someone's secrets. But his Imam puts it in a very interesting perspective of like, yeah, you might say it like that, but taking, like, basically saying, like, secrets are our foundation, and the moment you tell all those secrets, that foundation comes crumbling down of the life someone has built, making that life come to an end. So basically saying, you telling Reddington's secrets will in a way end his life, because everything, every shroud, every lie, everything will come crumbling down, and you don't know what the domino effects will be. Essentially saying, like, I'm not telling you one way or another. Honestly, you are in an unfavorable position, Denbei. And the fact is, I wish you didn't have to be in this situation, because no matter what choice you make, basically there will be consequences. There will be a domino effect. Either you let me die or you tell Reddington's secrets. And it's just, there are going to be consequences. There are going to be dominoes and ripple effects either way, And when the time comes, Denbei chooses to tell Reddington's secrets. And even then, you can tell he's still reluctant, because he didn't want to be in that position, because he doesn't want to betray Reddington. Like, Reddington's his oldest friend. They have the connection they do. It's like, especially for Reddington, because especially knowing that Reddington doesn't deal well with betrayal. Luckily, Reddington got there in time. And his Imam was alive, because it's like, oh, the guy that was holding Denbei's Imam was like, oh yeah, he told us everything. And Reddington was like, no, he didn't, because if he did, he'd be dead right now. In my mind, being like, oh yeah, like the moment Katarina got what she needed from Denbei, she was going to most likely kill Denbei and his Imam. But just because it's like, for one, it would have meant, like, it would have been a middle finger to Reddington to be like, hey, I killed your friend, your closest confidant, after he told me all your secrets. So just kind of an extra middle finger to kill him afterwards. I think she probably would have done that. I think that's how I'm looking at it. But, maybe I'm thinking too much about it. But regardless, it's a very complicated situation, because Denbei says, like, yeah, I didn't tell her anything, but I was going to. So it's like, what does he do? Because even I told Denbei, like, there wasn't going to be an encore of this situation. Like, he betrayed my trust. Once again, we know how he handles people betraying him. Like, he does not appreciate that. The only person he lets slide with that is Liz. Liz is sadly the only person that has betrayed him time and time again that he will always forgive. He will always, like, make excuses for. I mean, granted, like, because Kate's betrayal was kind of, connected to Liz. So it's a complicated situation. Speaking of Liz, there's actually, I didn't talk about it, but it's like, oh yeah, like she had that conversation with Reddington. She's like, wait, you bought a restaurant just so you can eat this specific meal and everything? He's like, yeah, you'll learn about it soon enough. And she's like, yeah, I don't like that particular food. He's like, well, like the fact is, when everything gets passed over to you, she's like, excuse me, what? He's like, yeah, I'm basically leaving a lot of stuff to you. And basically saying, like, a lot of stuff, like, has to be left in other hands. The fact of the matter is, there's a lot of, like, stuff that's going to be handled on its own, but there's some things like assets, billions that need to go somewhere. And he's like, a majority of that connected to those assets, you will have control of. She's like, I'm an FBI agent. You're basically living your entire criminal empire to me. She's like, that's not going to fly. And I just thought that it was such an interesting thing of like, holy crap, you're dropping. And she's like, why are you doing that now? You know, it's just kind of like, he kind of avoids the question, but then later on Wrestler's talking to her and he's like, what did you expect? You act surprised. What did you think he was going to do? Like, give it to charity? She's like, honestly, I never really gave it too much thought. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, it makes sense in the grand scheme of things. But the fact is, he even said like, yeah, this isn't what I wanted. This isn't what I hoped for, but you know, circumstances change. I've changed, you've changed. Because he says like, yeah, you're an FBI agent, but you're also Katarina's daughter. So making me think like, because it's stuff he says later on, I'll go ahead and talk about it because he sets things up with Marvin to be like, hey, I needed you to kind of give all this money to Liz. It's like, you mean the cop? Why would you do that? It's like, she's going to need it on the road she's going down. Whether she realizes or not, she set down a dark path and she's going to need it. So I'm assuming because of who she is, eventually it's going to come out, you know, because it's already been a thing before that she's Katarina's daughter. So it's going to be a thing of like whatever path she walks down, that line she's going to have to blur between like who she is as a cop, because it's already come up a time and time again of like the dark instincts that she, like Reddington has definitely rubbed off on her. But the argument could be like those darker sides of her just come from her mom. You know, so that could be the argument. So it might not even be Reddington that kind of feeds into that darker side. It feeds into the darker side of her that's already there, that darker side she gets from her mom. Like, that could be the argument. Which is interesting because it's like, instead of having an angel and a devil on your shoulder, you have two devils, your mom and Reddington. A complicated situation. As in this Reddington, not like the real Raymond Reddington. You know, so it's just, it's a complicated, you know, situation. I think it's quite fascinating. So I just think he's preparing her for like what's to come, and what that is necessarily we don't know. But Wrestler does let him know like, yeah, I didn't read Reddington's file, but the fact is it was thick, meaning like, you know, he's sick, kind of explaining what this might all be. And for Liz, it's like obviously she had no idea, so it's like, wait, like what's going on there? Because the fact of the matter is, it's like, because for her it doesn't make sense too, because it's like, you know, this is before Wrestler told her that, but it's like he talked to the private eye I hired, so he knows that I know that he's not Ilya, yet he's still willing to hand over the criminal enterprise to me. I don't get it. Rather than confronting me about it, he's handing to me the keys to the castle. But that's what I'm thinking. It has to be for whatever is to come, like whatever the aftermath of this is. Either way things go, we'll get to that soon enough. It's going to end with her needing that for what's to come. Because basically, Katarina comes into the car and I was like, does Liz know? But she was like, going after his imam, was that really necessary? And she's like, yeah, because he's innocent. Like basically for Katarina, her life is at stake for her. So there is no innocent people in this. It's like the war she's fighting with her life on the line. She's willing to do anything. And so now Liz, I think, is seeing her mom in a different light. Yeah, her mom is fighting for her life, but at the same time, it's like you're willing to kill someone that isn't a player in this situation. But the fact that you're willing to do whatever, and it's, you know, now it's a situation of even saying like, you're going to have to make a choice. And she's like, wait, what? Like, both of us can't live. At the end of the day, yeah, because she's like, I hope that, you know, it's like, Dembe made the right choice in this situation. He chose his Iman over Reddington. So it's like, and you know, you're going to have to make a choice. And she's like, I thought I already made the right choice. She's like, you did, but you're going to have to continue to make others, because at the end of the day, neither one of us, both of us can't live while the other is around. So basically Liz is going to have to make a choice. At the end of the day, the choice is going to come down to her. She has to basically decide who lives. Will it be Reddington or will it be her mom? You know, are you going to pick the man who isn't who you think he is? And man, you still don't really know who he is yet. He's played such a pivotal role in your life. Obviously, for the years you weren't aware, but even the years over the course of the series, we've come to know he's played a pivotal role in your life, or your actual mom. So it's a situation of like, you know, blood versus non-blood type of, like, who's more family to you type of situation. And obviously if she had it both ways, she wouldn't want Reddington. She doesn't want Reddington dead. She doesn't want it to come down to that. But it's like, as long as the other is alive, like, one of them, like, while both of them are alive, like, it's always going to come down to that. So, and even Reddington being like, oh, she kind of has no choice, you know? And even Marvin being like, yeah, no, like, she has no choice, because that was the same conversation he had with Dembe's Imam, because it's like, Dembe, you know, didn't have a choice, and Reddington's like, you always have a choice, you know. So the reason why his mom didn't say anything to the FBI about who kidnapped him is because Dembe asked him not to. So it's that thing of like, is there really no choice in this situation? Because because he talks about jihad, like everyone every day has their own struggles, you know. And then Reddington's like, what do you know about my struggles? He's like, yeah, I know you have them because like everyone has them. Because he's like, I struggle with the fact is I didn't tell the FBI about who took me, and tomorrow my struggle will be, why didn't I, you know? So it's a complicated thing, like, and obviously Reddington's got his own struggles as well, so it's like it's going to be interesting to see where all this goes, like, especially now Liz is in this position of like, what will you do, like, and even Katerina putting it on her shoulders, like, this conclusion all comes down to you. You're the one that's going to basically decide how this all plays out. So she's the one, once again, has to pick who lives, Reddington or your mom. Once again, not even the real Reddington, not even Ilya, you know, so it becomes that. So what choice she's going to make, we'll ultimately have to wait and see. Next episode is the season finale. Some things to kind of keep in mind. I'd already saw this a little bit prior to, I saw glimpses of it, but the season finale is going to be animated. Like, my understanding, just from the like tiny little article I read, because I got like a Google alert about like an article saying like, oh yeah, like to get around everything going on, like people behind the Blacklist have tried to like animate. It seemed like it was only going to be part of the episode, not the entire episode. I don't know. This is episode 19. I avoid previews and stuff like that, so I didn't know. Like, it says the season finale, but I don't know if it's a 2-hour season finale. Obviously, like the Blacklist doesn't shy away from doing that from time to time, so I don't know whether it's going to be like, because the next episode is episode 19, so I don't know whether it's a situation of it is going to be like a back-to-back season finale. Like, maybe they got episode 19 completely done, but maybe episode 20 wasn't. Or maybe just like, because of everything going down and what they're making into the season finale, like 19 was partially done, so we're going to morph it into a more clearer season finale, even though it's not the season finale. Like I said, that depends on if it's a 2-hour finale or not. Like, I'm sure, like I said, there's a lot of like behind-the-scenes stuff. But like I said, my understanding was only some of it was animated, not the full episode. Maybe I could be mistaken. Maybe a lot more of it's animated. I was just expecting like maybe like a little bit of an animated sequence to kind of fill in certain things. Maybe that'll be the case, but either way, I'm really interested to see where the hell this season finale takes us. Like, this is a lot, this is some heavy shit to be going into a season finale with. Also, you know, where Reddington's going to stand at the end of the day with this whole Dembe thing. Like, this, are you really going to forgive Dembe again for his betrayal and stuff like that? Like, you know, especially, once again, his ailing health and everything too. Like, going into this, things are not looking good. So, like I said, we'll have to wait and see where the season finale takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.